Robert was sweet while we were dating, but he changed drastically after we got married. He constantly brags about working at a top-tier company and lords it over me and the kids every day. I wanted to continue working after getting married, but Robert and his father John ordered me to quit, so I reluctantly became a housewife. One evening, Robert looked at me and laughed. "You've aged, haven't you? You were somewhat better when we got married. Being the housewife and goofing off has made you age even faster. Using the kids as an excuse to be lazy, it's only natural you become worthless as a person. I've had enough. Let's get a divorce," I blurted out. Robert gave a sleazy grin. "Raise the 4 kids on your own. I won't help you at all." I almost laughed. Had he ever helped before? Thinking about being rid of the noisy bunch made me feel refreshed. I'll get the divorce papers from City Hall and slam them on him. "You can say whatever you want for now. Enjoy it while it lasts." I'm Scarlett, a 50-year-old housewife. I met Robert through my parents and married him 30 years ago. His verbal abuse has worsened over the years, becoming a constant headache. It wasn't like this when we were dating. Robert, who graduated from college and works for a top-tier company, often talked about his job during dates. I didn't understand all the jargon, but I thought he was serious and passionate about his work. Having lost my dad in childhood and seen my mom struggle, I wanted to marry Robert, who had a stable job, to give her peace of mind. Growing up without my mom around was hard for me. In contrast, Robert was raised by his dad after his parents divorced when he was a teenager. Not knowing my own dad, I was thrilled to have someone I could call dad, even if we weren't blood related. I hoped we could get along like a real father and daughter, but that hope was quickly dashed. After getting married, I found out that Robert was completely under John's thumb. Many of Robert's relatives are not salaried workers but run their own businesses or restaurants, and John also started his own business. Robert deeply respected John. I got into a famous university and joined a company because I followed Dad's advice, he often said proudly. Since the divorce from Mom, Dad raised me while expanding his company. He's an amazing man. Yes, he is, I'd say, not knowing how to respond. I'll make sure my son studies hard and gets into my alma mater's high school and college. I worked in Dad's company for a while but had to change jobs due to an injury, causing trouble for Dad. So, if I have a son, I plan to make him the successor to Dad's company. That's thinking too far ahead, especially when I wasn't even pregnant yet. Before we had kids, I could listen to him and laugh it off. But after giving birth to girls in succession, Robert and John gradually started to treat me coldly. When our 3rd daughter was born, John visited the hospital room, looked disdainfully at the baby sleeping in the bed, and clicked his tongue. "Another girl, hey? Robert, you've got a failure for a wife." "I'm sorry, Dad," Robert said. "Scarlett, if the next one's a girl too, we're getting a divorce. A wife who can't produce an heir is useless to us." Exhausted in bed after a difficult birth, I couldn't stop crying at their cruel words. The thought of divorce crossed my mind then. Later, when our son Thomas was born, John doted on him. Robert, John, and Thomas would go out to see animated movies, buy toys, and John would give Thomas an allowance, leaving Thomas confused and the daughters complaining to me about John. Every time I slightly burnt the food or a speck of dust fell after cleaning, Robert dramatically lamented and mocked me. "If this were your job, you'd be fired immediately. It must be nice for women to be supported by their husbands and laze around at home all day. I wish I could just play with the kids and slack off every day too." Hearing this always made me angry. I had wanted to continue working, but right after getting married, Robert and John ordered me to quit my job. "Are you sure you can handle your duties as a wife perfectly if you're going to slack off? Quit your office job," Robert said. John added, "That's right. You have to take care of him and do the housework perfectly. You don't need to work. His salary is enough to live on." I was appalled by their outdated attitudes but didn't want to argue with my husband or John as a newlywed, so I obediently complied. After Thomas started elementary school, I tried to re-enter the workforce as a full-time employee but was rejected everywhere. The reason was always the same. Having 4 children, they assumed I'd likely take time off for sickness or other issues. Reluctantly, I became a housewife and Robert treated me like a servant, constantly finding faults and criticizing me as a useless housewife. He used his busy job as an excuse to dump all household chores and parenting on me. I didn't mind handling the housework since I was a housewife, but whether I was sick or sleep deprived after childbirth, he acted as if it had nothing to do with him, showing no support at all. Recently, I've been sleep deprived because of the baby's night cries. Robert, you're off tomorrow, right? Could you take care of the child for one night? Ha! I finally get a day off. Don't ruin my precious holiday. Taking care of the baby is a mom's job. You can at least handle that much. When I was at my limit after days of only 2 hours of sleep and asked Robert, who was laughing loudly at a video with a beer in hand, for help, he yelled at me. Another day, when I wanted to consult about the kids, he said, "You're an adult. Think and decide for yourself. You're a veteran, having raised 3 already. Don't rely on others." If he came home to find children's toys scattered on the floor, he'd immediately get in a bad mood. When I'm tired and come home to see the house in a mess, I lose the will to come home. You've been home all day, right? It should be clean. I'm sorry, Thomas was crying, and it was hard to prepare dinner. I'll clean it up now, I said as I gathered the toys. Robert's sarcasm rained down on me. Thomas is spoiled because you're not strict enough. You're a failure. This makes you unqualified as a mom. Spoiled. I wondered. Thomas was only 5. It's natural for him to assert himself, but such comments felt like a stab in the heart. Hey, don't look so glum. It ruins the meal. It's annoying, so go to another room with the kids. Robert waved me away. Our eldest daughter, Madison, glared at him. Dad, why say that when you're eating the meal Mom made? What did you say? A girl talking back to her dad. If you're going to complain, then leave. Madison, don't say such things to Dad. Let's go upstairs. I calmed Madison down and took the younger kids upstairs. Once we were in our room, Madison burst out. Why do you stay silent, Mom? You should talk back to Dad. Doesn't it make you angry being told such things? Why not just divorce? I'd love to, but divorcing with 4 kids requires a lot of courage. I'll earn part-time money when I'm in high school. Isn't that enough? I smiled weakly at Madison. Thank you. I appreciate the thought. As I gently stroked Madison's head, she fell silent. Madison, a middle schooler, seemed to feel that her parents' relationship was beyond repair, so on days she had no plans, she'd actively take care of her younger siblings. I wished Robert, as their dad, would interact more with the kids, but he always treated them as nuisances and a source of his stress. On weekends, when the kids made noise, he'd complain and order me to take them somewhere. My head hurts. I feel sick. Despite disliking children, when we visited the in-laws' house, he pretended to dote on Thomas to show John how much he valued the heir, which was hypocritical. One weekend, Robert got up past noon and seeing me eating lunch with the kids, announced, "You see I'm tired, right? Take the kids somewhere. I'm going out for drinks with a junior from work in the evening, so you can come back by then." All right, by the way, our living expenses have been cut back this past year. Can we return to the original amount? I asked timidly. Robert's eyes narrowed. You can manage with $300 for food and living expenses. As a housewife, you should be able to budget better. Can't you do that without a college education? $300 is impossible. Your salary must have increased with all the overtime and weekend work, right? Why are the living expenses being reduced? When I questioned him, Robert became furious. Shut up. How I spend my salary is my business. How dare a housewife argue with me? Who do you think provides for this lifestyle? I gave up arguing with Robert. I couldn't rely on him anymore. While the kids were at school, I studied, earned qualifications, and secretly started working remotely. One evening, after a while, Robert came home reeking of alcohol and laughed when he saw me. I thought you were some old lady, but what a surprise. You're Scarlett. Welcome home. You've drunk too much. Just leave me alone. But you've really aged. You used to look a bit better when we got married. I was furious. Due to the reduced living expenses, I had to switch to cheaper cosmetics and hadn't bought any new clothes in a year. Meanwhile, he frequently bought new suits and ties, went out drinking every night under the pretense of treating his subordinates, and purchased brand-name shoes and watches. With a trembling voice, I clenched my fists and retorted, I want to dress up beautifully too, but you're the one not giving me any money, Robert. Don't blame others. It's because you're lazing around as a housewife that you age faster, Robert mocked loudly, always sleeping, lacking a sense of urgency, using the kids as an excuse to be lazy. No wonder you're failing as a person. Dizziness hit me from the anger. Who was it that ordered me to become a housewife despite wanting to continue working? I've had enough. Let's get a divorce, I blurted out. Robert's face showed a moment of surprise, but he quickly smirked. Fine by me. I'm tired of seeing your gloomy face anyway, he agreed easily. But raise the 4 kids on your own. I won't help you at all. I almost laughed. Had he ever helped before? It had always been just me raising all 4. Thinking of getting rid of the noisy bunch felt refreshing. Too absurd to respond, I headed for the entrance. I'll get the divorce papers from the city hall and slam them on him, I thought, turning my back to Robert. I smirked defiantly. You can say whatever you want for now. Enjoy it while it lasts. When I handed the signed divorce papers to Robert, he took them with a half smile. Are you sure? Don't come crying to me with regrets. Can you manage with 4 kids? You've been living off of me. As I urged the kids and packed up for the move, he lounged on the sofa, taunting in a mocking tone. Your mom says she works, but it'll be tough for an old lady to support all 5 of you. Ready for a poor life together. Even if you try to work, you'll get rejected because of the kids. Actually, I've started remote work. I have savings from before we were married, and we can manage if we don't live luxuriously. What? If you started working, why didn't you tell me? You were always too tired or telling me to take the kids somewhere because we were too noisy. You never listened to me properly. Well, whatever. Your salary is probably way less than mine. Don't beg me for help. Ignoring Robert's sarcasm, I silently packed our belongings into cardboard boxes. The movers will come in 3 days to pick up our stuff, so leave it as is. Please take care of the divorce papers. Got it. Do whatever you want. I called the movers, took only the essentials and valuables, and drove to my parents' house. I planned to stay there for a while and look for a new place once things settled down. I briefly explained the divorce to the kids while packing, but in the car, I went over the situation again. Sorry it's so sudden, but we'll be transferring to a new school starting next week. I'm sorry, everyone. Yay, I love Grandma, so I'm excited. It's not far by bus. We can still play with our friends, so it's all good. The kids tried to cheer me up by acting excited, nearly making me tear up. Won't you miss living with Dad, Thomas? Not really. Dad doesn't like us, right? Thomas pouted. He always yells that we're noisy or annoying. When he's home on the weekends, he doesn't play with us or listen to us. I didn't like being around him. Right, we all felt that way, Mom. The kids' agreement filled me with regret. I should have made the decision to divorce sooner. When I called my mom to explain, she was surprised and saddened. Robert always played the good husband and dad when we visited my parents for Christmas, so my mom thought we were happy together. She was heartbroken by the news. After the kids went to bed at my parents' house, my mom told me, Scarlett, you can stay here as long as you like. We'll manage the living expenses somehow. Thank you, but I'll be okay. Could you introduce me to a lawyer, though? Of course, but you'll have to wait a bit since I'm fully booked right now. Let me know if there's anything you need help with, okay? Understood, I replied. My mom's strong words resonated with me. 6 months after the divorce, my children and I were starting to adjust to our new environment. As I returned home from shopping, I found Robert standing in front of the gate. His hair, now mixed with gray, was unkempt, and dark circles under his eyes made him seem utterly disheveled. He lunged at me as soon as he saw me with my bag, but I coldly shrugged him off. Who are you? Come on, don't be like that. I'm your master. I don't have a master. What does my ex-husband want at my parents' house? I asked, pushing him away. Robert began to rant in a near frenzy. I was suddenly kicked out of the house. What's going on? It wasn't sudden. You must have received several notices about paying the rent, right? If you ignore them, getting kicked out is inevitable. Why should I pay? Because you are the tenant. Hearing the commotion, a middle-aged woman from the neighboring house peeked out of her front door. Scarlett, what's happening? Should I call the police? No, it's okay. It's just my ex-husband who has come over. The woman glanced at Robert and frowned. Ah, that one. Scarlett, let me know if you need anything. With that, she disappeared back into her house. What have you been telling people about me? Let's go inside. We're causing a disturbance. Ignoring his question, I led Robert into the house. As soon as we were inside, Robert sprawled on the living room sofa and downed the coffee I offered before returning to the topic. That house was bought by your mom, wasn't it? Yes, but the deed was in your name, Robert. You were too proud to have it in your wife's name, saying it would be embarrassing. Robert seemed to remember, tilting his head as if to say, That's right. But back then, you were just a regular employee without enough money to pay the mortgage, so my mom used to transfer money into the account every month. Oh, that's right. Then stopping the transfer suddenly would be a problem for me, wouldn't it? You're dumb. Can't you understand that? I sighed, holding my forehead. Who's the dumb one here? Who in the world keeps paying their daughter's ex-husband's mortgage? Robert frowned. Your mom's rich, right? If she has money, she could have continued paying. It's unfair. Families should help each other in times of need. Who was it that told me not to rely on others when I needed help with child care? And aren't you a senior manager at a large company? Why are you so broke? Pressing him, Robert became flustered and replied, You know why. I was treating my subordinates. It's an important duty of a superior. At the expense of our household budget, the time you reduce our living expenses coincides with when you started working overtime and on weekends. Robert's face stiffened at my observation. I had to maintain communication and motivate them to work harder because of the increased workload, Robert explained. Oh, I see. So you're kind to subordinates but cold to your own children and wife. Subordinates are different, they're endearing. Ah, I see. How about this suggestion? If you're kicked out, why not stay in a business hotel? I got some hotel vouchers from a friend of my mom's who runs one. Robert's eyes widened. Really? You give that to me? I have plenty, so I don't mind sharing a few. You do have your generous moments. I'll be sorted by this weekend, so that'll do. Handing over the hotel vouchers I received from my mom, Robert left in a good mood. Everything seemed set. On the weekend evening, while watching animal videos with the kids in the living room, the doorbell rang. At the door were Robert and John. I swallowed my surprise as they barged into the living room. John surveyed the relaxing children and bellowed, Watch such nonsense. That's why you're all so childish. The pleasant atmosphere of our weekend shattered, and the kids teared up from John's thunderous scolding. Then John turned his anger towards Robert. Robert, are you really leaving Thomas with this woman? What about the talks of him being the heir? I want her to struggle raising 4 kids on her own to make her realize how much she depended on my earnings, Robert declared arrogantly. If you want an heir, I should marry a younger, more obedient wife and have new children. I guess you're right. Find a new wife quickly. Their conversation made me feel sick. As always, they only saw a wife as a tool for producing children. Are you too daft? Robert flashed a malicious smile. We've come to demand compensation. What? Neglecting your husband's care while fussing over the children is a grave sin. You and the kids made it impossible for me to relax on weekends, causing me stress. So I'm claiming $10,000 for nuisance fees. I agree with Robert. A wife should prioritize her husband over the children. Neglecting the husband's care shows a lack of awareness as a wife. It took me a while to grasp Robert's words. I thought they were joking, but seeing John's intimidating presence, it seemed they were serious. A headache began to form. I wanted to commend myself for enduring years with such a person. As I pondered how to respond, Mom appeared at the open living room door. What a lively scene, she spoke in a calm tone. A man in a suit stood behind her. As planned, Mom had brought a lawyer. Relieved, I glanced at John, who had turned pale and was trembling. The once aggressive man seemed entirely different. Hello, Scarlett's mom. Dad, please explain the situation. Robert, too, seemed taken aback by John's sudden change. Regaining my composure with the appearance of allies, I left the room, fetched a large envelope from the bedroom, and returned to the living room after sending the kids upstairs with Madison. Leaving only adults, I laid out the contents of the envelope on the living room table. Mom, you finally got the lawyer's time. I'm sorry for the wait. Since your husband is here, may we discuss the compensation and child support claims now? Compensation. Robert looked puzzled, and I explained. Since you stayed in the hotel we specified, it was easy for the detective to gather evidence. You were even caught getting cozy in the car, resulting in many shots together. As I spread out the photos proving his infidelity, Robert was speechless. Eventually, he snapped back to reality and exploded. You had me stay at that hotel just to have a detective follow me? That's despicable. I don't want to hear that from someone who's been cheating for over a year. I also laid out the joint debit card statement on the table, showing shocking spending of over $10,000 on his mistress. You were stingy with the household expenses, telling me to respect you as a corporate executive. Yet as a father and husband, you're the worst. John spoke softly after a silence. So it wasn't you, but Robert who was having the affair. That's right, she's making a big fuss over a mere affair. Truly a worthless wife, Robert retorted carelessly. John glared sharply at Robert. You damn liar. John suddenly exploded, and I tentatively asked, What did you hear, John? Jane explained with a displeased look. Robert told me that you were the one cheating, neglecting the kids and housework, dumping everything onto him. He also told me how you threatened to take the kids and leave, and he came to ask me for help. What? That's all lies. Would you like to hear the recordings of Robert with his mistress or the verbal abuse towards me and the kids? No, I'd rather not. Just like your mother, you're hopeless, John muttered irritably. After a moment of contemplation, he abruptly apologized deeply in front of me and my mom. Scarlett, I apologize for not investigating thoroughly and believing my idiot son's story. Please forgive me. Why the hell are you apologizing to them, Dad? Apologizing to women is shameful. Stop it, Robert said discontentedly, to which John hurriedly explained. Listen, you should apologize sincerely too. Scarlett's mom is a great benefactor to our family. Didn't you hear from your brother last year? His company was about to go under. I think I heard something about that. Scarlett's mom bought his company last year and became the new president. Thanks to her, the business was turned around. If she pulls her investment now, even our group company will be hit hard. Upon hearing John's words, Robert seemed to finally grasp the situation. His defiant demeanor shifted to one of panic, and he knelt beside John, crying like a child. I'm so sorry. It's all right, I wouldn't ruin your uncle's company over something like this. But Robert, you need to take responsibility, Mom said with an angelic smile. The mistress was your subordinate. I know the president of Robert's company. I've informed them about what happened. Starting next week, you're being relocated to a remote island. Such a shame just after you worked so hard to become a manager. Oh well, do your best at your new job. Robert, looking up, began to cry. It was his own fault. I felt refreshed, looking down at Robert. Later, with the lawyer present, we proceeded with the divorce formalities. A completely deflated Robert agreed to pay in full the compensation and the misuse savings from our joint account that I had demanded. Mom, as she declared, informed Robert's boss about the affair through a mutual acquaintance. The boss, being a devoted husband, was furious. Robert's mistress resigned voluntarily, and Robert was sent to a branch on a remote island. Demanding and receiving compensation from the mistress in a lump sum, I learned that Robert had fallen from his elite path. The mistress quickly dumped him, bound to start over. Robert, however, faced ridicule for the reason behind his demotion and, feeling unbearable, quit the company. Burdened with a huge debt from repaying me in monthly child support payments, Robert was working multiple part-time jobs from morning till night. Estranged by John, he was living a lonely life in a dim apartment. Meanwhile, John, having injured my mom, faced cold treatment from relatives. After employees complained about his tyrannical behavior, his company faced a strike, leading to its collapse. Now he's working part-time at a restaurant, berated by a younger manager. While Robert was preoccupied with his affair, I saved money through remote work and bought a second-hand house. Moving in with my children, I found the memories too unpleasant and had no intention of returning. The children, now free from Robert and John, were noticeably happier and more comfortable. On long weekends, we visited my mom's house, enjoying cooking and chatting together, which became our latest pleasure. I plan to continue remote work and, once Thomas is a bit older, look for a full-time job again. With occasional support from my mom, I want to live happily with my 4 children.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick, is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him, and he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.